Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Extreme Evocast, an all-purpose Pokemon podcast hosted by yours truly, Lillieceon, also known as just Lillie. I'm going to go through a little bit of background about myself and what this podcast entails in the future and all that kind of jazz. I am a animation student at the University of Tampa in Florida. And you'll have to excuse me if this podcast is a little bit unprofessional, starting off because I've never really done any sort of medium that is audio based. I mean, I've done a few streams with voiceover where I talk over playing games and all that, but I've never done extensive recording like this, and without having something to talk about that I'm playing or that I'm watching. So you'll have to excuse me if things are a little bit unprofessional right off the bat. Like I said, I've never done anything like this before. I'm used to doing things in sort of a entertainment medium with my art and like my Patreon and all that stuff. So doing things for people's entertainment is something that I'm slightly used to. So hopefully I can segue that into and apply that to this podcast. This podcast is going to be bi-weekly, meaning every 2 weeks. I almost said twice a week. That's not true. That would be terribly exhausting. So it is every 2 weeks, twice a month. It is going to be released on the first and third Wednesday of every month. So in this case, it would be, I believe, the 20th of February. So hopefully you're listening on that day. If not, I will do something to change that. So this podcast is going to be primarily focused on just general Pokemon topics, with a personalized twist on it, meaning that I'm probably going to be talking about a lot of stuff relating to me and my experiences with Pokemon, because I mean, Pokemon is my favorite thing ever. Really, it's my favorite video game franchise. I've played all the games. I have lots of experience since I was very young with Pokemon, so I like to think that I'm a pretty good choice to be talking about Pokemon extensively. There will be news related to Pokemon, but this isn't going to be a primarily news podcast. I'm more focused on just talking about topics in a very chill way. But there will be a little bit of news in the beginning of every episode, as well as some segments later on that'll talk about things like every episode. But it's not a news-based podcast. I guess that's all I have to say. I really hope that you enjoy this if you are listening. And because like I said, I've never done this before, and it's completely new to me. I've gotten a few bits of inspiration from some other podcasts, but I'm not like a super avid podcast listener. But I'm hoping that I can take that experience with listening to podcasts and apply it to here. This podcast is heavily inspired by podcasts such as My Brother and Me by the McElroy Brothers. As well as the Adventure Zone, and it's super effective, the Pokemon podcast. I know there's already a pretty big Pokemon podcast out there, and it's super effective, but I'm hoping that I can not rival, but go up with and get up there in terms of Pokemon entertainment, and make some good radio for y'all. So starting off with the news, I guess, would be a good way to start. I am going to be sourcing my news. Anytime I find some news online from a source like a website, other people, I will be sourcing it as best as I possibly can. But there are going to be a few news articles that aren't sourced if they're just from like the official Pokemon Twitter. I don't really think I have to source that, tell you guys what's going on with that. But I will give credit where there's credit due. Starting off, this is from pokebeach.com, a Pokemon website about all things Pokemon. Korokoro magazine just released Charizard and Reshiram GX from Double Blaze. I believe the 10th Sun and Moon trading card pack, or whatever you would call it. I'm not really a super avid Pokemon trading card game fan, so I'm not 100% sure what it's called exactly. Packs, editions, I'm not sure. I just like to collect them, the old ones mostly. So I'm not really super familiar with new the newer Pokemon trading card game packs and Pokemon and cards and all that stuff, but I will try to relay that to people who are hopefully interested in it. I'm not going to go too into specific information about the cards, but there is Charizard and Reshiram GX from Double Blaze. Talking about Pokemon Go now, there is going on right now, which will be over by the time you're listening to this, but I thought it would be interesting to talk about it, the Shiny Swinub event, because it is Saturday the 16th when I'm recording this, so it actually just started, I believe, 2 hours ago. I'm going to go out later and hopefully try to get a Shiny Swinub, because I've gotten most of the Community Day Pokemon, Shiny Pokemon. The only one I didn't get was Totodile, which I'm very sad about. But I do have most of them. But you can go out this weekend, right now, and get yourself a Shiny Swinub. I hope that to all listening to this got a Shiny Swinub and got their green Mamoswine. It is for the Year of the Boar, I believe, Community Day celebration. More on Shiny Pokemon and Pokemon Go. You can get Shiny Meltan. That started about a week ago. I'm not 100% sure that you can still get it, but I know that it did happen, and it might be still going on. I'm not 100% sure. But akin to the Shiny Swinub, I hope you all got a Shiny Meltan, and maybe a Shiny Melmetal. I don't know. Those things take a lot of candies. I really want a Melmetal for my Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu, decks and getting all the master trainers. But oh my god, it takes so many candies, and I'm hoping I can just meet someone, like a friend who has one and can just trade it to me from Let's Go, because I really don't feel like catching Meltans. But you can get Shiny Meltan. I'm not sure if you still can, but I know you could. And also something that happened pretty recently was the Valentine's Day event. You could find an influx of pink Pokemon. I'm not sure if you could find any shiny Pokemon. Any of the pink Pokemon that appeared more, like Hoppip, Luvdisc, Jigglypuff, Clefairy, Execute, all those. I'm not sure if they could be shiny, but I never found a shiny, but they could have been. I'm not 100% sure. I think Luvdisc might have been able to be shiny, but that was very useful for me, and I'm sure lots of you, because fairy Pokemon are pretty rare. They're one of the type that I haven't gotten the gold medal for, catching 200 of them, along with like Dragon and Ghost and the rare types. So that was good. I got I think 30 or 40 fairy type added to that. So that was really good. More about Pokemon Go. There is the Pokemon Go Snapshot update, which you can take pictures of your Pokemon with the AR camera much more easily and accessibly than you could before. I've seen some pretty interesting things, people taking pictures with their prize Pokemon. Now, you can do it a lot easier with the upcoming update. You can put any Pokemon, I believe, into the AR camera and snap it, in real life, and make it look like your prized Pokemon is right there with you. Going off of Pokemon Go, there is a new Detective Pikachu trailer. There's nothing very new about it. It kind of just shows the same scenes, the same premise. I don't think there's any more Pokemon other than, I think, Lillieceon that got revealed for the real life, the real adaptation of it, which I'm very happy about, honestly. I was like, ever since I was a kid, I was hoping that they would make like a live action Pokemon movie, and like, hands down to them for making it not terrible like every other video game movie out there. I mean, a lot of people do think that the Pokemon look pretty creepy, and while I do agree a little bit, I think that they look great. I think that they look exactly like Pokemon would if they were real. So props to them for figuring that out and making what looks like a great movie. Alright, this is coming from Sarah B. You all know Sarah B. I don't have to explain what Sarah B is. Sarah B is up there with the most popular Pokemon websites. Pokemon Duel has gotten update 7.0.0, which adds Z-moves, and over 20 new figures. I play a little bit of Pokemon Duel, not very avidly. I play like every once in a while when I'm bored and I just want to open it up and play. I'm not like super into it, like optimizing my figures and all that stuff, but I do have, I do like it. It's very fun. But I'm not sure exactly what this entails with like the how much this affects gameplay, how much it affects the meta, because I don't know what the meta of Pokemon Duel is. But you can now get Z-moves in Pokemon Duel. And I believe when I opened it the other day, I got a free Pikachu with Catastro Pika. I'm not sure if that's for everybody, but I would try to open up Pokemon Duel and see if you can get one for yourself. They just gave it to me for free with the update. One more thing from Sarah B. The last news article for the day is we saw a glimpse of Mew and Pikachu in the new Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution movie. They kind of have like a new look to them, more of a more CGI kind of a realism look to them, and I think they look great. I believe it was featured in Koro Koro, which is where Sarah B got it from, but I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, that movie also looks very interesting. I'm pretty happy with how the new movies are shaping up to be. Okay, so I think that's going to end it for the news articles for today. But we can get on to our main topic, which is I was trying to think of a good topic to talk about for the pilot, and I found a pretty good one, considering Smash Ultimate is pretty big right now. I mean, it did just come out, or like 2 months ago, and it's still one of the biggest games. I see it all over the place, and I am a pretty avid player of Ultimate. We're going to be talking about Pokemon in Smash and how it is represented, how well it's represented, and talking about the fighters. We're not going to talk about the Pokeball Pokemon or the stages this episode. I just want to focus on the fighters, the main cast of Pokemon in Smash. But hopefully in a later episode we can talk about more of the obscure Pokemon references and inclusions in Smash Ultimate and other Smash games as well. We're gonna go into talking about the Pokemon in order, going along with the Smash Ultimate Everybody is Here motif, and how the character select screen is in order of who joined. We're going to be talking about them in order of their inclusion. Just a little bit of a thesis before we start talking about the specifics. I think Pokemon is very well represented in Smash. There are a few things that you might hear me complain about in the future, but overall, I do think Pokemon is well represented in Smash. There's not really much else that they really could do to increase the representation, other than a few smaller things. I was thinking, like, what if they added like a PP system into Smash, but that would be insanely dumb. It would probably work the same way as Robin, with their, limited supplies and probably recharge over time, but I think that would be not very good. At least maybe not for every fighter, but maybe for Pokemon Trainer. But because that's more focused on the train, like that Pokemon Trainer is mainly focused on Pokemon as you playing as the trainer, and not as the Pokemon, which I think is interesting. We'll talk about more of that when we get to the Pokemon Trainer section. So starting off, we're going to talk about Smash 64, the first one, obviously. I never played Smash 64. Smash 64 was, I wasn't born when it came out. I'm only 19. I was born in 1999, so I never really had a chance to play, obviously, when it came out. And I never got the chance to play, later, because, when I was younger, right, when I got into video games, Brawl was out. So, so I was like, I'm not going to start with Smash 64 when I have both Melee and Brawl. Even if Brawl wasn't out, I probably would have started with Melee anyway. So, interesting how Smash 64 only had 2 series represented in it that had more than one fighter, being the Mario series with Mario and Luigi, and Pokemon with Jiggs and Pikachu, which I think is good because it kind of shows how well Pokemon was doing at the time. Pokemon was insanely popular back then, and it still is. But the fact that they added, the two Pokemon to represent Smash 64 at the time was insane. Because like I said, the only other series was Mario, and that was also insanely popular. I guess you could also say that Yoshi is a Mario character represented in Smash 64, but he's always been kind of his own series, like the Yoshi series. Even in later titles, he's always been represented as his own series, which I think is good for Yoshi, because even now he's starting to to go off and make his own games with Yoshi's Crafted World, Yoshi's Island. That was a while, but Yoshi's always been kind of his own star for a lot of games. So we can start off by talking about Pikachu. I do have an interesting fact about Pikachu with his costumes. In Ultimate, he's missing his goggle alternative costume and his choice band costume, which made him extremely dark, like his shiny form, which I'm kind of upset that they got rid of that, because the Ultimate lineup for the costumes are very they're all kind of the same color Pikachu, except for the Ash Hat one is kind of darker, but the choice band Pikachu from Smash 4 was really dark, really, really shiny form. Obviously they added the new female costume, the female tail, in Pikachu Libre, and the Serena hat, or not Serena, the Sun and Moon protagonist hat from Sun and Moon. It's interesting because, obviously we never expected them to do the gender differences in Smash 64 and maybe Melee. I'm not sure when the chronological order of when these games came out was, but obviously we didn't get any gender differences in Pikachu until Gen 3 with the heart-shaped tail. So with we never expected them to do the gender differences in Smash 64, and maybe Melee. I'm not 100% sure when that ties into the development of the game and when Gen 3 came out, with Melee. But I'm really surprised that we never got that with Brawl and onward. Brawl and Smash 4 and Ultimate now. We did get it in Ultimate, but I'm surprised that they never did it until Ultimate, because it's kind of a big thing about Pikachu's character with, being, having the gender differences with the heart tail, because Pikachu's always been the mascot, and I'm surprised that they never really put as much diversity in Pikachu as they did in Ultimate, like before. Pikachu, just kind of in general, has always been a pretty top-tier character in Smash. I really like the inclusion of Pikachu, even though obviously Pikachu's a mascot, so they're obviously going to have Pikachu in Smash, even way back in Smash 64. But I really think that Pikachu is a really good inclusion, and I think Pikachu really, really represents the Smash series as a whole. Being one of the original 12 and being a threat and also just a staple of the Smash series for every single game to come. And I really like how Pikachu just ties in the whole Smash series. Another character that ties in the Smash series is Jigglypuff. Obviously, Jigglypuff being kind of a joke character in Smash 64, one of the 4 unlockables, aside from the original 8. Jigglypuff was kind of a joke character in Smash 64. I'm not sure how good she was in Smash 64, but her rest is obviously her staple and is terrifying in every game onwards. But it's kind of sad that Jigglypuff was the kind of joke character in Smash 64, because, if you think about it, we always think of Jigglypuff as, the staple of the Smash series, but, Jigglypuff is a weird Pokemon to put in Smash. Of all the Pokemon that they could have put in Smash, when choosing a second representer for Smash, all of the original 151, and they chose Jigglypuff. I just think it's really interesting how they chose just a first stage random, just normal type Pokemon. It was also Jigglypuff was also very popular in the anime series, being with putting the characters to sleep and writing on their face. But I just think it's really interesting how Jigglypuff got in over any other of the original 151. We did get, Squirtle, Ivysaur, and Charizard later, not until Brawl, though, which is also surprising to me. But just Jigglypuff. The fact that we got Jigglypuff is very weird to me. But, we don't think about that much because she's such a iconic Smash character with her rest and, how weird and floaty, being the second lightest character in the game now with the inclusion of Pichu. I just think it's very interesting. More about Jigglypuff, we can talk about Hungrybox. I'm sort of a follower of the Smash, Ultimate and Smash 4, less of which Melee. I'm not really a Melee player at all. I've only played Melee with friends really casually. I've never tried to play it competitively, so I'm not really sure how I feel about Melee. But obviously, Hungrybox, one of the most popular Smash players ever, plays Jigglypuff in Melee, and he does good with it. He does good with her, really, really good with her. And I think she deserves that representation, because in Smash 4, Brawl, and even really in Ultimate, she's not very good. But in Melee, she's up there, mostly because of Hungrybox and how much he's done with her. So I think that we can't mention Jigglypuff represented in Smash without talking about Hungrybox, arguably the best player of Jigglypuff in Smash history. I guess we can move on to, speaking of Melee, going on from Smash 64, we can talk about Pichu. Pichu is another joke character. I don't know why, I don't know what Game Freak is thinking with making all their joke characters from Pokemon, but Pichu was another joke character in Melee. Basically a clone of Pikachu that hurt herself when she used her electric attacks, was absolutely terrible in Melee. one of the lowest tier characters in that game. Nobody ever played Pichu, which is very sad because I love Pichu. And now that Pichu's back in Ultimate, she's top tier. She's arguably one of the best characters in the game. And if you played Ultimate, you probably know how scary Pichu can be. Much more of a combo-heavy character than Pikachu. Pichu has insane combos, and insane kill power. But of course, being the lightest character in the game, Pichu definitely has her downsides. I think that Pichu is extremely well balanced in Ultimate. I don't think that Pichu needs to be buffed or nerfed at all, maybe except for a few changes. But I think that Pichu is arguably one of the most well-balanced characters in this game. I mean, she has such obvious weaknesses with hurting herself and being the lightest character in the game, and also extremely obvious, good things about her with being so small, being so combo heavy, having such great kill power, and being adorable. But I really think Pichu is extremely well balanced in Ultimate, and as annoying she is to fight, I don't think that she really needs any kind of changes. Maybe a few things to nerf or buff her kit a little bit, to change some balancing things, but I think that overall I think she's a very, very well balanced character. And of course, a few tidbits about Pichu. In Ultimate, she actually has the same voice actor as in Melee. They didn't get they did do re-recordings of Pichu's voice lines, but they used the same voice actor from Melee, which I think is very interesting. And of course, we can't go without talking about how well the characters are represented in terms of their costumes, which I need to go back and talk about with Pikachu and Jigglypuff. But with Pichu, we have the spiky-eared Pichu, which is a really good inclusion. I was really hoping that they would add a spiky-eared Pichu. Of course, a reference to the spiky-eared Pichu that you get from the Heart Gold Soul Silver, Shiny Pichu event. That happened a while ago. It was a shiny Pichu, and it had a spiky ear with the time travel, business with Celebi and all that stuff, which I think is really interesting. I guess we can go back and talk about Jigglypuff. Jigglypuff isn't really well represented that much with Pokemon in terms of her alternate costumes. She does have the Nurse Joy hat, which I think is good, but other than that, she doesn't even have her shiny form, which is a common theme with all the Pokemon in Ultimate, or in Smash in general, where for some reason they don't have their shiny form, and I'll talk about that later, and it bothers me so much, and I don't know why. It just seems it really does just seem like a free costume, the Pokemon literally have an alternate costume right there. And half the Pokemon don't even use their shiny form, which is crazy to me. Pikachu, I think, is now very well represented in terms of their costumes. I mean, even in Smash 4 and Brawl, Pikachu's always been pretty well represented, but more so now in Ultimate, because we have the reference to Gold and Silver with the Ethan hat, a reference to Ruby and Sapphire with the Brendan hat, the Emerald one. We have the X and Y protagonist, the Sun and Moon protagonist hat, and we also have Pikachu Libre, which is a representation of Pokken, and also the cosplay Pikachu from Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, which, I mean, they really couldn't have represented Pikachu or the Pokemon series with Pikachu's costumes really any better than they did. I think Pikachu's costumes are amazing in terms of representation. Can't really say that for Jigglypuff. I mean, Jigglypuff just has kind of a few hats. Doesn't really have any kind of theme with referencing any characters other than Nurse Joy. Jigglypuff just kind of has hats, which I guess it would be kind of hard to really give her many hats and costumes that would represent the Pokemon series very well. But we'll give them credit where it's due. The Nurse Joy has a good touch, and I like a few of the other costumes that Jigglypuff has. Pichu. Let me pull up Pichu's costumes because I don't know them offhand. She does have a few new ones from Melee. She has the goggles, which was one of the removed Pikachu hats. I kind of like how Pikachu kind of passed down the hat to Pichu. It was kind of the other way around, because Melee Pichu had the goggles originally. Melee Pichu was the first one to have the goggles, and then in Brawl and Smash 4, they gave the goggles to Pikachu, and then when Pichu is back, they gave it back to Pichu, which is a good little touch. I like that. And then we have the red bandana, which I'm not really sure what that's a reference to, but it's there. And then we have the Skull Grunt and the Aqua Grunt hat, which are bandanas, which I think are really good touches. I really like those. And then we have the Spike-eared Pichu, and then the flower, and the Focus Band, which I think is a funny little nod to the fact that Pichu hurts herself, and with the Focus Band she can stay alive a little bit longer. But I like that. It's kind of a nod to the Choice Band in Smash 4. They kind of like gave it to Pichu, sort of. Just changed the headband a little bit, which I like. I guess we can go on to Mewtwo. Well, how do I feel about the representation with the first three in terms of their costumes? I think it's good. I really do think it's good. I think that there's not really much else they could do. Maybe a few other references, but I think that they've done it enough. We can move on to Mewtwo now. Mewtwo is the other character that was added in Melee, the fourth Pokemon character added to the game. Mewtwo, I don't really have much to say about Mewtwo other than the fact that he wasn't in Brawl for some reason, was replaced, quote-unquote, by Lucario. A lot of people say that Lucario was Mewtwo's replacement, which I can see, but I also think that Lucario is a good standalone character that doesn't really deserve to just be called Mewtwo's replacement. But Mewtwo, I really liked playing Mewtwo in Smash 4. He was one of my mains. And Mewtwo is a very fun character. And I think that Mewtwo is very well represented in Smash in terms of his moves. All of his moves come from actual moves, from the games, which is a staple for all of the Pokemon characters. But I think that Mewtwo does it well with Confusion, Disable, Shadow Ball, and Teleport. I think that those are, a staple. Mewtwo's costumes aren't fantastic. Obviously, Mewtwo doesn't really have his shiny form. He kind of has a nod to his shiny form, which is the kind of the teal green, but Mewtwo doesn't have a straight up shiny form. If I remember correctly, let me look at Mewtwo's costumes, and I can confirm or deny that. Mewtwo, because Mewtwo's shiny is the green. Yeah, there's kind of a green. It's more of a yellowy color. I believe the teal, the cyan color is based on its original shiny form in the gold and silver ones, where the color palette was different. With the different color palettes. But they kind of just kept it in Brawl and onward. I never really had much of a, change in heart for giving Mewtwo a shiny form, which is a little sad. The rest of them are kind of just alterations of color, the best they could do, like the blue, the orange. I believe they're based on possible colors for Pokemon Stadium when you use Mewtwo, which I think is interesting. And then the last one is the Shadow Mewtwo. It seems like that one would be based on Shadow Mewtwo from Pokken and all that, but it's actually based on Shadow Lugia Gale of Darkness, because the costume predates Shadow Mewtwo. So I guess you could say now it's based on Shadow Mewtwo, but it's kind of hard to, considering the costume was made before Shadow Mewtwo was ever a thing in Pokken and before. So it's a little, you can't really say that. But Mewtwo did have a voice in Melee, in Japanese though. When Mewtwo won in Japanese, the Japanese version of the game, he did say some things in Japanese. But other than that, Mewtwo never really talks, and I think it was kind of a missed opportunity, because Mewtwo, kind of like Mewtwo's whole thing in the movies, Mewtwo Strikes Back, the original Pokemon movie, Mewtwo talked telepathically and had a great voice, and I think that they really did miss an opportunity for that, giving Mewtwo a voice. I think Mewtwo with a voice in Smash would make Mewtwo a lot more threatening than he already is, and make him, give a little bit of representation for the Pokemon that can talk. So we can move on to Brawl now, but before that, I want to talk about. I want to go into my first segment, because we're getting to the 35-minute mark, and I want to go into the first segment, which is Random Pokemon of the Week. Random Pokemon of the Week is a segment where I choose a random Pokemon every episode, using just like a random Pokemon generator, and we talk about that Pokemon. So this week's random Pokemon of the week is Oshawott, the Sea Otter Pokemon. Oshawott is a water type, obviously one of the starter Pokemon for Black White 2 Gen 5, I really like Oshawott. Oshawott's not my favorite of the original three Unova starters, but I do really like Oshawott. I think that his design is really good. I think that his evolutions design are really good. One thing I do not like about Oshawott was anime Oshawott. I think anime Oshawott was very annoying, but that's just me. Oshawott in the anime was kind of, cocky, son of a bitch. I never really watched much of the anime, much of the Unova anime, but what I do remember from the Unova anime is Oshawott being kind of annoying. I do remember specifically about Oshawott. I remember when Gen 5 was being revealed, and there was silhouettes for the Gen 5 starters and revealed, and obviously we didn't know what they were at this point. They were the first Pokemon revealed for Gen 5, and all we had was their silhouettes. And I remember a bunch of artists coming up with concept art for these starters based on their silhouettes. And I remember some of it was the funniest things. Some of them were so far-fetched, so insanely wacky designs, because it's so hard to come up with a Pokemon just with a silhouette. When you've never seen it, you don't know what the type is, you don't know which one of the starters it is, you don't know what animal it's based on or anything like that. It's very difficult to come up with design just based on the silhouette of the Pokemon. And I remember Oshawott, everyone thought that Oshawott was the grass one. Or something like that, and some of the insane things, some of the insane designs that people were coming up with for Oshawott. I just remember it being the funniest thing. I did forget to say, I do want to go through a little bit of information about Oshawott. Oshawott, obviously, like every other starter, evolves at level 17 in Dewott and evolves at level 36 as Samurott. I'm not gonna take too much time talking about their evolutions, because they could be a possible random Pokemon of the week later. So we're just going to be talking about Oshawott. Usually what I would do is talk about Oshawott or talk about the random Pokemon of the week in terms of competitive viability, but being a Little Cup, there's not really much that I can talk about in terms of Oshawott competitively. I'm looking on Smogon right now, looking at Oshawott's page, and there's no movesets available. Oshawott does have a pretty high special attack for a first stage Pokemon at 63, which is interesting. And I obviously that would be the staple of Oshawott's attacking. I'm not really too familiar about Little Cup and what the kind of meta and strategy for Little Cup tends to be, but I don't know. Oshawott seems like he could be a little good guy for playing Little Cup. I mean, he's just water typing. He's got a good type. He's got pretty good ability with Torrent and Shell Armor, which you can't get struck by a critical hit. Pretty good stats. His HP and attack are both 55. Like I said, his special attack is 63, which for a starter, not too bad. For a first stage, not too bad. Not amazing either, but not terrible. A few things more I want to talk about Oshawott. I remember, because Oshawott is one of the main characters that you can play as in Pokepark 2, which I really enjoyed. I loved Pokepark. Pokepark 1 and Pokepark 2 were one of my favorite games that I played. I remember back in high school, middle school, I think, playing the original Pokepark Wii and trying to 100% it, like get all the friends, all that stuff. And I played it for hours and hours and hours on end. Pokepark is a game that nobody really remembers. Personally, I loved Pokepark and even Pokepark 2. Pokepark 2 was almost as good as the first one, arguably. One of the rare occasions where a sequel is just as good as the first one. And if you don't know what Pokepark is, I very, very, very much recommend trying it out. If you have like an emulator on your computer or you have a Wii and you have a chance to pick up the game. Pokepark and Pokepark 2 are insanely fun. They're kind of an open world sort of friend gathering game, I guess would be the best way to put it. Trying to solve the main story, you befriend a Pokemon in lots of different ways, such as like, racing them, beating them in battle, bringing things for them, doing certain things for them, befriending certain Pokemon before you can befriend them, and it was kind of like a catch 'em all kind of game, like Pokemon tends to be, but with you play as Pokemon, and you befriend other Pokemon. In the first Pokepark, you only got to play as Pikachu, and then in Pokepark 2, Wonders Beyond, you could play as any of the three Pikachu, and then any of the three starters with Tepig, Snivy, and Oshawott. And I think it's interesting having Oshawott, Snivy, and Tepig being playable characters in a Pokemon game, other than just Pikachu. And I remember my favorite was to play as Snivy, because I loved Snivy's voice, and I really liked just being Snivy because I love Snivy. But Oshawott was fun too, and I'm glad that Oshawott got representation in that game. It was very interesting to see, being able to play as the starters in a full-fledged spin-off Pokemon game. It was very, very fun. That's all I really have to talk about for Random Pokemon of the Week. That was the first one, Oshawott. And we'll be doing this every episode. I'll just be choosing a random Pokemon, talking about it. A pretty simple segment. Normally I would have 2 segments per episode, but because this episode is kind of long running already, and also because I couldn't think of another segment to do, The topic for this episode is kind of going to take a while to go through. So I'm not going to do a second segment, but usually there'll be 2 segments, one, about like halfway through the video and then one towards the end, kind of like a third, 2/3 through kind of deal. But I figured that I would go through and do just one segment about halfway through this time to give a little bit of taste and see how things go with segment of the Pokemon of the week. So we can get back into Pokemon and Smash, and we are talking about Brawl now. I'm gonna kind of go through this pretty quickly because this episode's already running kind of long, and I'm not sure how much longer it's gonna take to talk about the rest of the Pokemon. Obviously, there's Lucario in Brawl, and also a Pokemon Trainer. Going through with I can't think of the word, but adding 2 Pokemon in every Smash game. Lucario was quote-unquote Mewtwo's replacement. Had a lot of pretty similar moves with the Aura Sphere compared to the Shadow Ball. All I really want to talk about Lucario in Brawl is his final smash, which I'm really glad they brought back in Ultimate with like the Aura Storm, I believe it was called in Smash Brawl. In Smash 4 they changed it into Mega Lucario, and then in Ultimate they kind of combined it together into one, where he turns into Mega Lucario, but he just uses his Brawl Final Smash, kind of going in with the motif of making the Final Smashes in Ultimate quicker and not needing to control them as much, which I do like. I appreciate that they brought back the Brawl Final Smash, because that was like my favorite thing about Lucario in Brawl, was using his Final Smash, because I think it's really cool. I am briefly going to talk about how scary Lucario is with his aura. If you don't know what aura is, in Smash, Lucario is more powerful the more damage he takes. The more damage he has, the more knockback and damage his moves do, not to be confused with the Rage mechanic, which is a staple in Smash 4 and Ultimate, which basically you just do more knockback with how much damage you've taken. But Lucario has Rage on steroids. And I believe you can kill somebody, or you can smash somebody with a fully charged forward smash at max rage at 0% at the edge, and they will die, which is absolutely insane. But other than that, Lucario is kind of a pretty basic character. I do feel like Lucario is well represented in terms of his moves, with Aura Sphere, Force Palm, Extreme Speed, and Double Team, I believe, with his counter. I do like how all of the special moves are moves from like actual Pokemon moves. I really appreciate how they went through and made sure that was the case, and that they make sense, with Double Team being a counter. I like that. I like how they kind of interpreted Double Team as being like a counterattack sort of thing. And I do briefly want to talk about Project M. But I can talk more about Project M with Pokemon Trainer. But I'll briefly mention Lucario in Project M. Lucario is pretty scary in Project M, where he can grab you in the air with his Force Palm and shoot you straight down with a spike, which I think is really cool. They did a great job in Project M. If you don't know what Project M is a mod sort of thing for Smash Brawl. It's basically a game of its own, where they take all the Brawl characters, add a few more from Melee, and make it more of a Melee standard game. Like they take the Brawl mechanics and turn them into Melee mechanics. So it's kind of like Melee 2, but with the Brawl engine, if that makes sense. It's really interesting. I played a little bit of it, and I guess this can be a good segue into what I wanted to talk about mainly with Lucario, which was his costumes and how terrible they are. Because in Smash 4 and Brawl and Ultimate, he just has a bunch of blue skins. He has like a pink one in Ultimate they added, but over the years, Lucario's costumes in Smash have been absolutely abysmal. They're terrible. They don't even have shiny Lucario, which I talked about before, is a huge pet peeve of mine. But with Lucario skins are absolutely horrible. They're just all a different shade of blue. One of them is purple. One of them is a lighter blue. One of them is like almost white. And then he does have like a green skin, which like they're so bad. They're so horrible. There's so many more opportunities you could have done. They could have added like a red Lucario, a shiny Lucario, which could have been like the yellow team skin because it's golden. And they did. In Project M specifically, they did add a lot more of these. They added a shiny Lucario skin. They added a red Lucario skin, and they also added a cool, like, almost like Street Fighter-esque, like, outfit with, like, you know, the headband and the robes for Lucario, which I think was really cool. Seriously, they tried to mitigate it a little bit in Ultimate because they gave him a new pink skin, but it's just so bad. It's still so bad. They really need to go back and give Lucario a few more skins because they're terrible. And I will argue this until the day I die. Lucario skins suck. Okay, on to Pokemon Trainer. Pokemon Trainer is interesting because it was in Brawl, was a combined, it still is a combined character of 3 characters. You play as Pokemon Trainer, and you can switch between Squirtle, Ivysaur, and Charizard. At least it was in Brawl. And Pokemon Trainer was very interesting in Brawl because they had a mechanic called Stamina, where the more you used a Pokemon, the weaker it got. And you couldn't use a Pokemon for a prolonged period of time. It basically forcing you to switch after a little bit because the Pokemon you were using would get tired and, you know, wouldn't be able to fight as well. Did less damage, did less knockback. But they did remove that in Ultimate when Pokemon Trainer came back as a character. To talk specifically about the characters, Squirtle and Ivysaur, I'm going to talk about Charizard in the Smash 4 part. Hold on, I'm going to take a drink real quick. Okay. So Squirtle, I never really played a lot of Brawl competitively. I was very young when Brawl came out, so I just kind of spammed moves when I played Brawl. And then Smash 4 was my first introduction to the series as a competitive game, which is good. And so in Brawl, I never really got a taste of, Pokemon Trainer. And now I'm glad that they're back in Ultimate because I really like them. I don't play them personally, but I do really like their inclusion and their representation in this game. I adore the fact that they added the new skins for Pokemon Trainer with being adding Leaf and also adding skins for every Pokemon game. Like, all of Pokemon Trainer's alternate costumes, the ones that affect the trainer himself, are references to the main protagonist in all of the Pokemon games, from Red and Blue to Sun and Moon, which is so good. I'm so glad they did that. It's so nice. That's what we needed in terms of representation for Pokemon. I guess in Project M, going back to Project M, they separated the characters into individual characters, Squirtle, Ivysaur, and Charizard, which I think is a really good idea. Personally, I main Ivysaur in Smash in Project M because I love Ivysaur in Project M. I love how Ivysaur plays, and I love I love the changed moveset. I love all that, and I just adore that they made them their own individual characters. And I was thinking how that would be how interesting that would be if they did that in Ultimate. Like, could you imagine if instead of bringing Pokemon Trainer back, they just added Squirtle and Ivysaur as individual characters, maybe buffed them a little bit, gave them their own individual movesets, like they did exactly like they did with Charizard, in Smash 4. I think that would be interesting, but maybe not the best choice in terms of character, because I really do think it's super unique that you can switch between 3 characters in Smash and as Pokemon Trainer, which is a staple that no other character really has. And I think it's a great inclusion, and I'm really happy that it was a Pokemon representative that got this unique thing, because there's so much cool stuff you can do with it, and I think it's really cool. Okay, so I don't really have anything else to say about, Pokemon Trainer. I was going to go into talking about how they played, but I don't think I need to. Okay, we can go into Smash 4 now. I guess it would only be, it would only be common sense to talk about Charizard next. So, Charizard, was one of my mains, in Smash 4. I really liked how Charizard plays. I really enjoy Charizard, and I'm actually kind of sad that they brought Pokemon Trainer back as Pokemon Trainer and not just Charizard, because I probably would have been a Charizard main in Ultimate if he wasn't put into Pokemon Trainer. But Charizard's always been that kind of character for me in Smash 4, where nobody really seems to talk about Charizard. Charizard was just kind of there. Everyone kind of agreed that Charizard was pretty bad, and nobody really ever talked about Charizard, which made me sad, because the other day, or a few days ago, when I was researching stuff for this episode, I was watching reactions and trailers for the Smash 4, or for the Pokemon inclusions of characters, specifically Charizard, and it's just really interesting how, like, there's reaction videos and trailers for all of the other characters in Smash 4, but, like, nobody really ever cared to react or upload a video of them reacting to Charizard or the other Smash 4 character, Greninja. It just seemed like kind of an interesting, exclusion to me. If you look, there's not really many videos of any of, like, the super popular Smash YouTubers talking about Charizard when he was first revealed, along with Greninja in the trailer. So I think it's interesting. Charizard, like, I don't really have much to say about Charizard. Like I said, he's pretty bad in Smash 4. I mained him in Smash 4. That's all I really have to say. Charizard was, I think he's a good inclusion. I think I'm happy that he was his own character in Smash 4. I'm glad they were trying new things out. I wish that they did that with Squirtle and Ivysaur, because I think that would have been much cooler. But it was something that they tried out, and then obviously they took away in Ultimate, because Charizard's now part of Pokemon Trainer in Ultimate. Okay, so Greninja. Greninja was Greninja's really weird for me, because in Smash 4 I absolutely hated him. I always kind of had a feel for just about every character. Like I said, Smash 4 was kind of the introduction to me as a competitive game. So I tried pretty much every character. I knew who I didn't like. I knew who I liked. I knew who I was good at in Smash 4. But Greninja to me was always one of my least favorite characters ever. I absolutely hated how Greninja felt, how he played. Everything about Greninja in Smash 4 was just icky. It's icky. I hated it. I hated it so much. I hated Greninja so much in Smash 4. I can't stress it enough. But when Ultimate came out, I went through trying characters, and I found out that I absolutely love Greninja in Smash Ultimate. He's really fun, and he's actually my main my main in Smash Ultimate, which is interesting to me because they didn't really change very much about Greninja. They did the obvious change with all of the different all of the fighters where they made their aerials less laggy. They changed the engine a little bit. It's kind of the Smash 4 engine with a little bit of tweaks. And like Greninja really didn't get changed all that much, and I don't know why. I hate how he plays in Smash 4, but I love how he plays in Smash Ultimate. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe it's like a placebo thing, but I don't know. There's something about it, something about Smash 4 Greninja that just feels so disgusting in my hands, and Ultimate Greninja feels amazing, and that I love playing him. He's my main. Greninja, like, we can talk about Greninja's costumes, and how disappointing it is that Greninja never got a shiny form, a full shiny form. He kinda did. He's one of the Pokemon that did kind of get a shiny form, but it's a little bit different. I believe the fleshy colored parts of Greninja in his Smash Ultimate skin are supposed to be a different color in his shiny form. I believe they're white, not, and some of them are black, some of them are the same color as his main color, and also his tongue is not red in his Ultimate costume, but it's the closest we have to his shiny form. And his other colors are okay. I actually really do like Greninja's other colors. I like the super bright pink one. It's my favorite. That's the one that I use. But doing some research and stuff about looking on the wiki page for Greninja, they never really had any information about what his costumes were supposed to be a reference to, and I couldn't find it anywhere because it doesn't seem like any of his costumes are references to any Pokemon. They're just kind of Smash original costumes for Greninja. It's also kind of the same for Charizard. Charizard has a few that are references to, like, I believe his white one is a reference to Aerodactyl. He has one that's a reference to Dragonite, one that's a reference to other, dragon pseudo-legendaries like that. But he never got a shiny form either. He did, akin to Mewtwo, Charizard got his gold and silver shiny form, I believe, with like I don't remember which one it is exactly. Let me look at it. I believe they his alternate costumes were always kind of just references to other Pokemon, but there's one that let me look it up. I know there's one that's a reference to his old gold and silver costume. Where is it? Aha. I believe it is the green one. I believe so. I believe the green one was a reference to his old shiny form. And his no, it's the purple one. Sorry, I apologize. It is the purple one, because I remember him from being black in gold and silver. They couldn't do black, so they made him purple. And obviously he has the yellow skin, which is shiny colorations of Charmander and Charmeleon, which is good representation. Charizard does have quite a bit of does have a little bit of representation when it comes to his costumes. Ivysaur and Squirtle don't really. I believe those two actually do have their shiny forms. I know Squirtle definitely does. I'm not 100% sure about Ivysaur, but I know for a fact that Squirtle does have his shiny form. And that's been a thing since Brawl. So I guess that's all I really have to say about Charizard and Greninja. His costumes aren't great. He does have, I did have in my notes that I wanted to talk about his taunt, the taunt that does damage. His up taunt, I believe, has him squirting out some water out of his hands, and it has a hitbox, and you can get damaged by it, which I like. It's a good little nod to his taunt. Greninja also has all of his moves are akin to every other Pokemon, represented by Pokemon moves. He has, of course, Substitute as his counter, which, like Double Team on Lucario, I do really like how they made the defensive-based move Substitute into a counter, because it makes sense how you put a Substitute down and then you attack when they try to attack the Substitute, which I do really like that. I like how they turned it around from a defensive move into a counter. It just makes sense. And then he also has his Water Shuriken, his Shadow Sneak, and Hydro Pump for his recovery. I do also like how they made how Water Shuriken is really quick, and you can also charge it up by holding the button down, which is sort of akin to the mechanic where it has priority and it also hits multiple times. I guess that's sort of the dynamic that they added with that, which I think is a really good touch. Okay, I guess that's all we have to talk about with the Smash 4 Pokemon. And last but not least, certainly, is the new inclusion in Smash Ultimate, Incineroar. I can't go without saying, first thing I have to say about Incineroar is that he's number 69, which is cursed and very blessed in many different ways. The fact that he's number 69 is hilarious, but also extremely cursed. And I've seen lots of memes related to that. My favorite thing about Incineroar is... I could talk forever about Incineroar in Smash. His personality is unlike any other character in this goddamn game. It's so nice. Not even with the rest of the Pokemon, but his personality is amazing in Smash Ultimate. It is just perfect. He's so, flamboyant and shows off, and it's so perfect. I love it. And it goes with his whole, the fact that he's the heal Pokemon. It sort of gives him, like, the bad guy. Because if you don't know, the heal in wrestling is, like, the bad guy, quote-unquote, that goes against the good guy, like the champion or the title holder. Usually the heels are, like, fan favorites. People, people boo them when they go on stage because they're like in the lore, in very big air quotes, of wrestling. There's always a good guy and a bad guy. The person who's fighting for the title is usually the bad guy, and Incineroar is based on that. Incineroar, that's why he's part dark type. Incineroar is the heal Pokemon, so he's the bad guy, and that's why he shows off to the crowd, and when he hits moves in Smash. That's why his personality is so great, because his whole character is based around his personality. It's what he is. Incineroar is one of the only Pokemon of the game in Smash that don't have a lot of moves that are based on his moves in the game, which is nice because it kind of gives a little bit of a refresher, and it also further shows his inclusion as not just a Pokemon, but as a wrestler, as a different sort of character. Like, he's not just a Pokemon, he's a wrestler. And the fact that his moves are flashy and they're not just Pokemon moves, aside from his Nutrubee, is a really good touch. He has the Nutrubee Darkest Lariat, which is just him, spinning around. But his other moves, Cross Chop, Revenge, and Alolan Whip, aren't moves in Pokemon. And they're all based on wrestling things, other than Revenge, of course. Revenge kind of it is a Pokemon move. There is a Pokemon move, Revenge, but I think it's more supposed to be based on just the like Revenge as a concept instead of the Pokemon move. But it could be tied into the Pokemon move Revenge, because Revenge, I believe you do more damage after you got hit, and that's exactly what it does in Smash. If you get hit, it's like a counter, but it's like a delayed counter where your next move does more damage after you counter. And his fun fact, his Alolan Whip is named after, I believe, a wrestling move called the Irish Whip, where you throw someone against the sides of a ring and hit them as they fly back, which is what he does. And it's named the Alolan Whip because he's from Alola, which I think is a really good touch. Really, really good. And then his cross chop is just a cross chop. It's just he flies in the air and flies back down. Incineroar, also tying into the fact that he's a very different inclusion than just a Pokemon, which is like really hats off to Nintendo for doing that, for adding Incineroar as just a just as not only just a Pokemon, but as a very very unique fighter, because also very unique, he has a shiny form, which is his his black or his red and white coloration, which is his shiny form. His other colorations are just Smash Originals. There's nothing really referencing there. There's not really much you can do to reference with Incineroar. His other colors are just green, purple, blue, just basic colors, different color alterations in fighting games. But overall, Incineroar is an extremely good representative in Smash, because he's not only just a Pokemon, he's a personality, and I love that. I adore that about Incineroar. Like I said, I could talk about Incineroar in this game for hours upon end. But last thing to say about Incineroar is the fact that he uses his Z move, Malicious Moonsault, in his final Smash, which I also very appreciate. Kind of a representation of Sun and Moon as a whole, with his Z move and being a Sun and Moon rep, which I love. I adore that. And last thing about Incineroar, not really related to Incineroar, but it was confirmed with a interview with Masahiro Sakurai that Decidueye was originally going to be the choice for the Sun and Moon rep, which I would love to see their thought process for that, and how Decidueye would be a character in Smash, because that sounds really interesting to me. I would love to see Decidueye in Smash. I'm not really a huge fan of Decidueye. The Rowlet line is my least favorite of the Sun and Moon starters, but still, that would be amazing. I think that Decidueye would also be a very interesting Pokemon to be in Smash. And likewise, with Incineroar and Decidueye being potentials, with Incineroar being in Smash, I also thought about how interesting it would be for Primarina being in Smash. Primarina is my favorite of the Sun and Moon starters. I love Popplio, love Brionne, love Primarina, and I think that Primarina, this might sound crazy, but I think Primarina would be a really interesting Pokemon to be in Smash. I think that it would be weird, wacky, and she would be a very odd fighter, considering she has that big old fish tail. But I think that it would be really cool to see Primarina in Smash. I'm not 100% sure what her moveset would be. Maybe I can think about that in the future and get back to you about that. But I think Primarina would be an extremely cool representation, other than just Incineroar, Okay, so that is going to be the end of just talking about the specific Pokemon. I do want to have a little bit of a conclusion talking about Pokemon in Smash and how they're represented, just looking into the fighters. Do I think Pokemon is well represented in Smash? And I say very much so. There's not very much in terms of game mechanics and what the game is all about besides Pokemon Trainer, switching Pokemon, all that stuff. But the few things that are not represented in Smash are like the items, the other human characters that aren't Pokemon, other than in Pokemon Trainer, but that's very vague representation. There's so many great characters in Pokemon that I feel could be represented a little bit better, or just that in whole could be represented very much better in Smash, because Pokemon isn't just about the Pokemon. It's got amazing story, it's got amazing characters, human characters, and all that jazz. As well as one little complaint is about representation of Pokemon in Smash is the spirits. I did want to talk about this a little bit. The spirits, all of the spirits that are Pokemon are just Pokemon. There's no human Pokemon characters other than Pokemon Trainer, the spirit, for the character spirit. Which I can always go into this more when I talk about the other aspects of Pokemon in Smash, like the items and the stages, briefly in another episode. But I did want to mention that I do think that they should add a few more spirits that are human, because Pokemon has amazing human characters, and they're not very well represented in Smash. Then again, like, they don't really take part in the fighting, which is, I guess, what the Pokemon do and why they're in the Pokemon game. In the Smash game, the fighting game. I definitely do think that Pokemon is very well represented in Smash, with the different moves, the different costumes, the different Pokemon. I mean, there's a Pokemon from essentially every region, except for maybe Gen 3. I believe, yeah, there's no Gen 3 Pokemon. That's the only one that's not represented, which is sad because Gen 3 is my favorite. Or Gen 5, now that I think about it. Because there's Gen 1, there's Gen 2 with Pichu, Gen 3 there's none, Gen 4 with Lucario, Gen 5 with none, and then Gen 6 and Gen 7. So yeah, Unova and Hoenn are the only ones that aren't represented. Who knows, maybe we'll see Blaziken? Emboar? Superior? Who knows, probably not, but they are represented well enough. Maybe not as a fighter, but as, with the stages and the Pokeball Pokemon, which, again, I'll talk about another time. But I definitely do think, to wrap it up, that Pokemon is well represented, very well represented in Smash. I think that the combination of the moves, the Pokemon, how they use them, what they do to represent the moves as attacks in the game, are very nice. The costumes represent a lot of the little details in Pokemon very nicely. And yeah, I really do think so. I guess that's going to end it for this week. I really appreciate if you've listened this far. The one thing I ask is that I need feedback on this. If there's anything that you think that I could do better in this podcast, please tell me, because I want this to be as entertaining as possible for you, for everyone that listens to it. I want to make this as just as best as possible. You can find, yes. I slurred up my words a little bit there. I apologize. But yes, please, I need feedback. Feedback is the most important thing to me. You can find me on Twitter at Lillieceon, LILLIECEON, and also on lots of other social media, usually just with that tag. I'm not 100% sure where this is going to be at the moment. I believe Spotify is definitely a for sure. Perhaps iTunes. I'm definitely going to just post it on SoundCloud and also on my YouTube channel, which is just Lillieceon. So you can listen to it for free anywhere you want. And I do ask that you please give as much feedback as you can. Ratings, recommend it to friends, anything you can do to get this up in the air, because of course this is just the first episode, and I want to get this up there and go to the skies. So I guess that's going to do it for today. Thank you all so much for listening. I really, really appreciate it. And this is just the first episode, and who knows how many I'm going to be doing in the future. So I really appreciate support, and the fact that you've listened this far. I really hope you all enjoyed. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.